Right, well, Carrie is starting her career. I'm finishing mine. This is my 20th autumn UKIP conference, and I well remember the first one where the chairman completely lost control of the question and answer session. And I've heard good speeches, challenging speeches, informative speeches, really vigorous speeches, and well, I've heard some other speeches. I want to recall good and bad moments. The bad I'll go like that, and the good I'll go like that. It started in 2001 with a very bad moment. I offered and did stand in mid-Norfolk as the UKIP candidate in the 2001 general election. At the time, I rented a farmhouse from my lord, Kenneth Keith of Castleacre, of course as true blue as you could get. And his tenant was going to stand for this upstart party that were challenging the Conservatives. Well, I had that nice farmhouse from him at a cheap rent on condition that I didn't disturb his lordship's pheasants. Well, as soon as he heard what I was going to do, he got in some land agents, rent review, my rent was very nearly doubled. And he boasted about this at a smart luncheon party a couple of weeks later. I've taught that chap Agnew a lesson, he won't stand against the Conservatives again. So that was quite a blooding. Well, I didn't take revenge on the pheasants, but I did move to North Norfolk, where I had a stroke of fortune. I stood as a local candidate. And you never know when you throw your hat in the ring who else is going to do it. As it turned out, there were only two of us, myself and the Lib Dem. In a two-horse race, I got 38% of the vote. A UKIP local candidate in 2000, early 2000s, incredible. But it was because it was a two-horse race. That did my CV in UKIP no end of good. Then a low point. 2004 European Parliament elections, I was very active for UKIP, number 4 candidate. Now, the National Farmers Union, you'll know I'm a farmer. I was a member of the NFU, and they always hold hustings at election time. And so they invited all the parties to come along in May 2004 to strut their stuff on farming. Now, UKIP sent for the Eastern region Robin Page, who at the time was or had been a well-known BBC presenter and a Daily Mail columnist. I mean, by God, he had some profile, this chap. I was the number 4 candidate. I went along as an NFU member. It was really wearing another hat, I suppose. But it got off to a terrible start. First of all, he was late. Then he insisted on bringing in a French TV crew, which the chairman said, you can't do that, they must wait outside. Then he started to shout and interrupt the other candidates, and I just felt smaller and smaller and smaller. But it got worse than that. Imagine the candidates lined along here, the chairman sitting in the middle, but the director of the region, a woman called Pam Forbes, was sitting behind everybody by an open window, just observing events. Suddenly she let out the most terrible shriek. What on earth was going on? Well, these clandestine people, these French TV people, had pushed one of these microphones with a great furry thing on the top through the window, hoping to hear the words of Robin Page. And as this microphone came through the window, it brushed her face, and she was really genuinely upset. I just wanted the floor to swallow me up. All the work I'd put in, low-key, talking to farmers about EU membership, 5 years of that went up in a puff of smoke in about 10 minutes. Now, subsequently, Robin Page had a blinding row with Nigel Farage about something else, and they fell out. And I noticed this was something that kept occurring. I saw that with Robert Kilroy-Silk, Roger Knapman, Marta Andreasen, Patrick O'Flynn, and Douglas Castwell. Heroes one year, villains the next. And the effort that went to get these people on board and to promote them and all the rest of it was extraordinary, all for it to fall apart. Where are we going now, up or down? Now, during the 2000s, I held an elected position with the NFU as Norfolk delegate to the HQ Council. This was re-elected every 2 years, but in the early time, I was unopposed. But a lot of farmers in Norfolk didn't like my anti-Euro stance. Many of them actually wanted us to join the Euro. And so they had it pushed against me. They found another candidate to stand against me. Quite unusual, actually. And we were given 150 words with the ballot paper. So I had 50 words on my farming, 50 words on what I've been doing in the NFU, and a 50-word rant against the Euro. And my friends said, why, Stu, why do you want to put out a suicide note like that? But I really felt it was important to make that distinction at that time. Well, I won by 260 to 160. That was quite good. It meant I had the job, really, for as long as I wanted it. During that time, as a UKIP member, I'd become interested in the various treaties. And I put together a little presentation initially on a flip chart about the 5-6 treaties, whatever it was. Tried it out on the local branch. They quite liked it. Word got round. I was asked to do this again. It morphed into a proper PowerPoint presentation, which I must have given about 100 times now in the Europarliament to visitors all over the country, actually. And it helped me become noticed in the Eastern region. You need these things. And I got in. I was number 2 candidate. 2 MEPs were going to stand down. There I was. And then another thumbs up. I was elected. Hardly believe it. What a life changer. Now, a young woman, don't jump to conclusions. It wasn't like that. And joined our MEP group as an intern in Brussels. And I was present at a social event, a dinner, and I just had polite conversation with her. But she rang me back a week later. Would I like to meet her aunt? Her aunt wanted to give a lot of money to UKIP, but anonymously. Did I know how this could be done? I had a look at it. Yes, there was a way of doing it. Contacted her, and we were all going to meet in a pub, aunt, niece, and me. I would buy them all a lunch, and I would tell them how this could be done. So I turned up at the pub, and the niece said, oh, my aunt's ill, she can't come. And I smelt a rat. And I said rather clumsily, how do I know you're not an undercover journalist? And she was a very good actress, by God she was. She made me feel a real bully, and butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. How dare I make such a monstrous suggestion? And I felt so bad that I just gave her chapter and verse on what her aunt needed to do to give money to UKIP anonymously. A day or two later, telephone call from the Sunday Times. Thank you for talking to our undercover journalist. We're going to run the story tomorrow. And they did. And there it was, in front page of the Sunday Times, yours truly, UKIP MEP Stewart Agnew, who will give you chapter and verse on how to break electoral law. Well, the ruse itself involved using a trust or something like that. The Labour Party had used it, but anyway, this closed down that loophole, and God, I felt bad. Embarrassment to everybody, really. Not a very good start to the political career. However, a thumbs up, a major highlight. A couple of years later, I was invited to speak at the Oxford Union. This is Oxford University's debating arena. And I was asked to propose the motion. This House believes that agriculture will thrive outside the EU. Oh, right, okay. Initially, I was terrified of taking it on, but then my assistant in Brussels, Tony Brown, said, go on, I can help you. And I took it on, and my opponent was a Lib Dem MEP called Andrew George. Each of us was given a couple of young farmers' members to be our seconders, and I hired a room in the Farmers' Club initially to have a rehearsal. Tony Brown was really helpful. Millie Wasted was great. And so we walked into that event with some intrepidation, but at least we tried. Well, it's quite intimidating in that bear pit, I can tell you, and the chairman made it even worse. He had a straw poll beforehand. Who would support the motion? Barely 10% of people raised their hands, and I thought, my God, we got a problem on here, but we gave it the full welly, she and I. She was great. I mean, I did the sort of the talking, the facts, but she was the visuals. She turned up in a Union Jack dress. She had this great big basket full of British produce she kept producing out, and we'd worked hard, and I got some good applause. I hope maybe we've done it. Our opponents hadn't put the work in. They assumed they would win, and guess what? At the end, when the vote came, I won. Tremendous. And that was I felt that was, I'd done something for UKIP by doing that. I was fortunate as well, another thumbs up, to be the only UKIP MEP with some farming knowledge. That meant I was a shoo-in for the Agriculture Committee. I could actually use my knowledge to some sort of effect. And the other members of the committee, whatever they thought about me politically, realised I knew something about farming. And I noticed after a time that I was becoming a presence on this committee, and that when my name was called to speak, there'd be a bit of a hush, a bit of a buzz, and people would put their phones down. I thought, right, at least I got an audience, even if they don't like me. And that turned out to give me an opportunity to be the author of an opinion. Now, UKIP MEPs don't normally do this, but I said to Farage, look, I can just really do some good or some bad here. And I went ahead to do this opinion, which was all about farmers and climate change. And of course, once I'd written this opinion and the EU published it, it became an official document. And it was like a climate change denier's, whatever you call it, a mantra. And those others on the committee, they hated it. They took it in turns to say what a bad chap Agnew was. He was bringing the EU into disrepute. Well, that's what I'm there for. And they, particularly the Socialists and the Greens, in that meeting, they were trying to outdo one another. I thought, well, I'll make some hay out of this. I got our technician there and said, let's isolate the worst speeches, let's rearrange them in order of extending indignation. So we did all that. I put the whole thing to music, played it at a UKIP conference. That was enormous fun. And I felt I really had done something for the party. Then we had a downer, a horrible moment for me, when I got a call from Channel 4 one day in Strasbourg, one January, miserable cold day. They had been sent a video by some animal rights people who'd actually invaded, without my knowledge, my unit one night. And I was asked to look at this video, to make a comment, and then it was going to be shown on Channel 4 News that night. And it wasn't good viewing. I was really worried. I couldn't understand. It didn't seem like my unit, but I knew it was. Things had been rearranged. I smelt a rat. And I went, and that was the best thing I did, to our press officer, Herman Kelly, and said, look, Herman, what the hell do I do? Animal welfare, animal rights, it's such a toxic thing for a person, an MPP, to be associated with bad animal welfare practice. I mean, it's ghastly. And he knew this journalist, and he bought me 24 hours. That was critical, because while I was talking to that journalist that morning, at the same time in the UK, two RSPCA inspectors, senior people, who'd also been sent the video, descended on my farm. My poultry manager was astonished. Well, what was the problem? And they said, we want to see it. And he started to show them around. And he said to me afterwards, they were thawing out as they went round. They saw the birds were in good condition. They saw that the records were done, that the litter was on the ground, the building was good. And they thawed out. That gave me a good positive report from the RSPCA. That 24 hours allowed me to send it back to Channel 4. They saw that, and they dropped the story, as did several other media outlets, but the bloody Daily Mail on Sunday would not let it go, and they ran with the story. But the RSPCA report countered really what they were saying, but it was a huge relief, that, and thank God for Herman Kelly, even if he is Irish. Now, what actually happened on that night in December 2017? They came in through a field across country. They got access in through a chicken pop hole. So they evaded our security. They knew what they were doing. They walked backwards and forwards in the middle of the night through my 16,000 birds with a torch, trying to find anything that didn't have many feathers on it, just piled all these birds up into a corner, then filmed them, pulled up some slats, grabbed some birds, stuffed them down onto the muck heap, slats closed again. They picked up a chicken, close up. It had feather stubble on it like this, and said, oh, this is red mite. This is a welfare issue. And one or two other things that they contrived it. We had no idea it had happened. The next day, egg production well down, lots of dead birds floating about. That carried on for 2 or 3 days. Called in the vet, couldn't work out what it was. An owl could have got in there and really spooked these birds. And it was the vet who then realized that when she'd been called out by us in December the 19th or whatever it was, that was the date on the video, or more or less, and put 2 and 2 together, and she told the RSPCA about this, and that really did help, but the whole thing was thoroughly unnerving. I really didn't like it. A low point, oh dear, down we go. I had to resign as Chief Whip for UKIP. Now, I took that job very seriously. I was very hard on the other MEPs about financial contributions to the party, about attendance and support at parliamentary by-elections, and about not criticising the party in public. Well, I wrote what I thought was a confidential letter to the NEC. I co-signed it, and I thought it was confidential. However, somebody decided to put it on Facebook. That showed me criticising the NEC in public, and I just felt obliged to resign. I had to be squeaky clean, and I really didn't like sending that letter out. Happier times, thumbs up. Lunchtime TV interview outside the Commission building. This was all about our financial settlements for quitting the EU, and I didn't let the interviewer, this was live, remember, get a word in edgeways. There was nothing he could do to stop my rant, which was very well received by those who wanted to vote, who voted leave. Of course, they never repeated it. They'll only repeat Godfrey Bloom talking about fridges. They won't repeat anything that's good from our point of view. One or two other things about the media. I was not going to be intimidated by Nick Robinson earlier this year on the Today programme. I really raised my voice to him. I'm sorry if I did that. I wanted to tell the audience about the stoning of homosexuals as part of the Islamic culture, and I was not going to be shut up. I'm proud of being no platform at Manchester University because of my views on the climate, and I'm proud of being no platform by Suffolk University because I was a soldier in the Ian Smith Rhodesian Army in the mid-1970s. Further happier times when the police eventually obliged a student to apologise to me in writing for defacing UKIP election boards. Maybe I should have pressed for prosecution. I was feeling perhaps a bit soft at the time. Now, there was one event that hung round my neck as an albatross, something I'd said. At a social event in Norfolk, this is the pre-thing, I was chatting to the wife of a college friend of mine, and I asked her what she did, and she replied that although she was much better qualified than her husband, she wanted to bring up her children, and that babies get in the way of a woman's career. She said it quite matter-of-factly. For my generation, that was the case. A few weeks later, I was asked to read Paul Nuttall's speech in the European Parliament. He was on the Fem Committee or the Women's Committee. He couldn't get there. I read the speech out. Then I was questioned, blue-carded, and stupidly, I brought out the line about babies and careers, and the world went mad. Everybody wanted to ring me up, and fortunately, though, I had said at the beginning of that speech how women were doing very well in careers previously reserved for men. But from then on, at every single hustings in the school I went to, the Labour candidate always made damn sure that this was all brought out right at the beginning, a personal thing. Always made it difficult for me. I had to overcome that. But it got worse because I then did one of these things at my local school at Fakenham. And the Green Party person hadn't turned up, but the Labour Party person went straight into the usual thing. But worse this time, the chairman of the event, a senior staff member sitting beside me, she really bristled. She really didn't like what I had said, and I could just feel the body language. And I thought, God, this is really going to be bad. I'm going to struggle here with the chairman dead against me. So we started. Half an hour later, the door burst open. In came the Green spokesman carrying a very small child. And she immediately said, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late, but you girls, you don't realise what it's like when you have a baby. They always come first, and it really messes up your life. And if you've got ambitions to do anything, it stops it. Well, of course, this was listened to in embarrassed silence because she didn't realise what had been said earlier. And, well, she introduced William to us all, this little baby. Well, maybe the audience were in embarrassed silence. William was not. He shouted, he wailed, he screamed, he made a hell of a noise. Making it difficult for the other speakers. He even drowned me out, and that takes something to do. Eventually, and I mean eventually, she was asked to take William away, but it was a long time coming, and the event was pretty well destroyed by this. Strangely enough, every time I went to a school debate after that, it was never mentioned again. Now, I just want to say thank you. For the 10 years I was an MEP, it was because of people voted for me. I hope I did the right thing. I really did try quite hard to please both masters, the taxpayer who paid for me to be there, and the UKIP people who actually got me elected. I had to please both masters. I hope I did. I feel I have a good conscience. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much.